In this video, I'm going to show you how to make infinitely generating or stacking tiles like you see in a running game. So, as you can see in this video, what we're doing is we're taking the tile at the very first one, and then we're moving it to the position of the last tile, and we're kind of like stacking as we go. So as you move, it's based on the distance of the player and the camera. That's what dictates the tiles to move. So we'll make a public game object, call it cam, and we also want to make a prefab that we're going to want to generate when the script initiates. And in the beginning of this video, I showed a bunch of city objects getting moved along. So those objects can be downloaded from the Unity Asset Store for free as of the recording of this video. Max tile count will be the max number of tiles or prefabs or objects that are going to be generated at the beginning of the scene. This tile width is the integer that we're going to track to know when we're going to be moving the first tile and infinitely doing that. And then the tile, and then this right here, tiles till trigger. That's the trigger point when as the player is moving, that the tile will move, or the back tiles. This right here is based on width and how many tiles it's going to take before we trigger. So like if you start at, tile 1 and your cam is moving, or your player is moving, when it reaches a certain amount of tiles, like maybe after the third tile, then it takes this tile right here and moves it. And it's kind of like a leapfrog effect as it's moving. And we also want to track what's the next transform or the next prefab that we're going to move. So after we move one of them to the last position, we want to track the next one to move to the last position. We also need a start index and an end index. And the reason you need the start index and the end index is because you want to be able to move the first tile from the list, and then you'll increment, so you move the next tile in the list, and then so on and so forth. And once you reach the end of the list, then we go back to 0. So I'll show you as we start getting to the update function. And then the last variable we're going to need is we want to be able to have a list of transform elements or a transform array, because we want to keep track of our tiles. So the first function we're going to make is called a getTiles function, which will take our prefab and it will, generate a bunch of tiles based on that one prefab, and it'll be stacking at the start of the scene. So we're going to call this getTiles, and this is going to make a new list. So based on how many max tiles we want, we're going to generate a new game object in the scene. And the position is going to be based on the current tile, and then it's going to increment and stack upon each other. And then we want to multiply by the width. And then after we've changed the position, then we want to assign it to that do transform. Okay. And to show you what this is going to do, let's add it to the start function. Make this, or sorry, set the start index to 0. We want our end index to equal the amount of tiles. -1. And then we want to set our trigger position to the width and how many tiles we will wait till we trigger. Oh, and one thing you need to also do is make sure this equals the transform of that tile. Add the infinite stacking script to our main camera. And I'm going to assign the camera to this cam variable. We're going to do a max tile count of, say, 5. And I want to make a prefab that we're going to use here. And I'm going to show you what happens when you start the script. So the prefab I'm going to make is just a simple, we're going to make a plane. Go to 3D object plane. And I downloaded this stylized texture pack from the Unity Asset Store. I'll put a link in the description. And but basically I'm just going to use one of these materials and I'm going to drag it onto the plane. Prefab has you know, this cobblestone effect to it. And I'm going to simply create a prefab by dragging it onto one of the folders in my scene. So I already made a folder called prefab, so I'm going to drag it on here, and I'm going to call it tile prefab. Okay, and then we're going to drag that tile prefab to the script right here. So what it'll do is when I start the script up, 5 of them will generate at runtime, or at the start. Since we're using a plane, I would say the tile width is about 10 cubes. So we're going to change this to 10. And I'll change this to 3, and I'll explain why. So I'll delete this, and we'll start up our scene, and you should have 5 tiles that generate at startup. Okay, so 5 tiles have been generated. I'm going to zoom out so you can see it. So you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So tiles to trigger variable basically means that when our camera or whatever object you've assigned the cam variable to, when that moves past that number, which in this case would be 3. So when this passes 1, 2, 3 tiles, once it gets beyond this level, it's going to take the first tile and move it over here. And then once it passes another 3, it'll take this tile and move it over here. So it's going to do that at runtime as this camera moves over time. So it's consistently stacking. In order to track the camera's movement, we're going to use a function within the update. So if the position X is greater than our next tile's position and trigger position, then we're going to move the next tile. And we're going to create a function called getNextTile. So what this is doing is it's going to grab, so the next tile that will be moving, will take in consideration the last tile's position and get beyond it. And then we're going to increment. And if we've reached the end of the list, we're going to start over. So with that new code, when I run the scene and I move my camera, notice the tiles will move with the camera when I get beyond a certain point. So to kind of show you what's going on, if I move this camera, let me rotate it. So if I move the camera, what you'll see is that this is continuously moving with the camera as I move. As I move forward. And there you go, it's moving with the camera and it's stacking. And just to show you something cool, if I change the prefab, it can look a little more interesting as it's moving. So I'm going to change the prefab. I'm just going to add something to it. So let's add like a cube. We're going to drag the new prefab on, run the scene again. And you'll see the cubes moving with the plane. Just to show you that you can change prefabs easily. So let me move this up and change the camera's angle. So as you can see, I'll move the camera, and now the blocks and everything are moving with it. And that's how you can create infinitely stacking tiles. Thanks again for watching this video. I hope you learned something in this tutorial. If you found it useful, please put a like in the video, and any questions or comments, put it down below in the description. I appreciate your support, and have a good one.